photo of Annenberg Hall, which is where the first-year students at Harvard eat every day. It's a little bit like Harry Potter, and it is a beautiful place. And I think that this picture really does show something about thinking higher and feeling deeper. I hope you'll think about it as you look onto it. So at Harvard, the curriculum works like this. Slide, please. So we take 4 years at Harvard. We take 4 classes per semester, 2 semesters per year. And we don't choose a major in our first year. In fact, we're encouraged to go into our first years having no idea what we want to do. And this is because in high school, you may not have had the opportunity to have explored some of the things which you may end up loving, right? When I was in high school, I certainly did not know that I was interested in neuroscience. We didn't even have a class in neuroscience, we just had science. And so it is this great gift to be able to go into university and take classes in all kinds of things you never even knew existed. My first semester at Harvard, I took a class in Neuro Toxicology, which is about poisons of the nervous system, with a professor from Harvard Medical School, and it changed my life, right? I decided that I was going to study this field, regardless of whether or not I was going to continue to do it for the rest of my life. At Harvard, you can choose from 48 concentrations, which is our word for majors, including folklore and mythology, biomedical engineering, and history and literature. We have a lot to offer. Can I get a slide, please? And then the other special thing about Harvard and about the liberal arts education is that we must take classes in 8 different fields, because this is foundational to the idea of learning the skills that will allow you to adapt to whatever field you are in. And so at Harvard, the 8 fields that the general education program has decided are sort of foundational courses are aesthetic and interpretive understanding. So this is like reading literature or listening to music. Culture and belief, so learning about the cultures and religions and anthropological phenomena of other places in the world. Societies of the world, which is about learning about the other nations and societies that have existed in this glorious world. Empirical and mathematical reasoning, which I think needs no explanation of its own. Science of living systems and of the physical universe, United States and the world, because of course Harvard is in Boston, Massachusetts. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, ethical reasoning, because as I said, it is so critical to question why you think what is right, and why you think what is wrong. Can I get a slide, please? Harvard is a place of extraordinary people and extraordinary experiences. I have found the people at Harvard are unparalleled. They are unsurprisingly completely brilliant, but this alone does not make them who they are. The people I have met at Harvard are talented in ways I didn't even know possible. They are funny, they have friends, they exercise, they excel academically, and in their spare time, they run their own companies, or they write poetry, or they compose music. I have learned so much from my peers at Harvard, it is difficult for me to describe the scale on which they have changed my life. Instead, I think I will try to describe some of the things that I have learned about myself from them. I think one of the most important lessons that I learned from them was that you have to have a sense of humor. Can I have a slide, please? Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody has a pretty crappy day every once in a while. It's so important to laugh at that and laugh at yourself. In this picture, we've been in organic chemistry lab for 4.5 hours, and we're really, really tired. So how are we gonna get through that? How are we gonna repeat those experiments and keep going when we're exhausted? We have to be silly, and we have to enjoy each other's company. So my teaching fellow in the back there is just winning at photobombing. He's a great guy. So I think that's one important lesson. And then another important lesson that I learned was, next slide please. It's critical to know your own strengths and your weaknesses. I love poetry, but I'm not going to be a poet. I have met my fair share of people who are poets, and I learned how to appreciate their art and acknowledge that I don't have that strength. Everybody you see in this photo is incredibly gifted at something. On the left there, my friend Amy is a world-class tennis player, and my friend Luke is one of the most talented violinists I have ever met. You know, I could not even express to you the talents that these people have. But I think that one of the biggest lessons I have learned at Harvard is to appreciate the talents that other people have without being envious of that. And being respectful of the talents that others have and acknowledging the talents that you do have. I think that's so important in being simultaneously self-confident and very humble. Can I get a slide, please? Thank you. So the next lesson that I think I've learned at Harvard is about broadening my interests and not being afraid of detours. Study things that seem totally disconnected. Ask questions that you've never heard being asked before. It'll take you to places you never thought possible. So I have had the great fortune in my time at Harvard to work in a neuroscience laboratory where we study the circuit underpinnings of a neurodegenerative disease. And I get to ask these questions about the brain, which is this thing which makes human beings human. And I have gotten to meet people who are interested in the same questions, and I've gotten to carry out the experiments that get to answer these questions. So you see on the slide here, these are photos of pyramidal neurons in the visual cortex, which I took in my freshman summer. They're beautiful, right? These are neurons that are in everybody's brains, and you can visualize them, but you have to know that you care about them, and then you have to put in the effort to learn about them. Did I always know that I was interested in neuroscience? Like I mentioned, no. I mean, in high school, I didn't get to study it. I thought I was just going to go to medical school, right? I still plan to go to medical school. And the thing is, I plan to maybe never practice in neurology. And that leads me to this next question of, does everything you study have to be related to the career that you eventually pursue? And I think my answer to that is no. Again, central to this idea of the liberal arts education is that you don't have to study the field that you will end up in, because you're supposed to get out of it the skills that you will be able to use to adapt to whatever field you belong in. And so right now, I know that I love to study brains and that I would like to be a doctor, but it doesn't mean that I will necessarily study brains for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. And then, can I get a slide, please? I also get to study at Harvard this thing called the classics. Now this seems to be an irrelevant exercise for many people because after all, the classics are about dead people, right? They're about the Romans and the Greeks who died thousands of years ago and perhaps have no relevance to our lives today. Except that is so wrong. The classics are incredibly relevant to, I think, almost all of the Western world, and I have had this glorious chance to study. So this here is a ballet by Maurice Ravel. It's called Daphnis and Chloe, and it is based on a novel from, I think it's the early 5th century BCE, and it's written in ancient Greek, and it is beautiful. And it's been brought out in so many different variations and themes over the last several thousand years to be presented again and again and again. And studying the classics has allowed me to understand this dimension of the culture in which we live, to appreciate what this art is all about. And so I really encourage you to explore things which you thought you were never going to be interested in, which you didn't even know existed. Take that risk, because I think you will be rewarded. Can I get a slide, please? One of the other big lessons that I have learned is that failure is your friend, because failure teaches you how to fail well. It is unproductive to try to avoid failure altogether, because I think everybody will fail every once and again. And so it's about how to make your failures not even seem like failures because you learned something from them. I remember my very first semester at Harvard, I was really surprised by the number of failures that I had gone through, right? I mean, I didn't get into most of the extracurriculars that I wanted to. I got my first assignments back, and there's and they were hard grades to understand, right? It was a pretty big blow to my self-confidence, right? Here I was, coming out of high school, I was hot stuff because I had gotten into Harvard. I must be so smart, right? No, not at all. I was not, in fact, hot stuff, and I had to learn how to deal with that. And learning how to deal with that is one of the most humbling and important lessons I have ever learned. So please, make mistakes, make them often, and then learn something from them. Can I get a slide, please? So, and the last big lesson that I have learned that I'll share is about having balance in your life. So this is a picture of me and my freshman roommates at Harvard-Yale, which is a yearly tradition in which Harvard and Yale come together to play a game of football. It used to confuzzle me, and that is a word, confuzzle, no, I'm just kidding. But it used to confuzzle me deeply that people made time for things like sports, like what do I care, right? But it's so easy to get caught up in achievement, in getting the gold star, and getting that next A, and winning that next award, that you forget to carve time out for the things you actually care about. Now, I don't care two wits about football, but I do care a great deal about spending time with the people in this photograph. They are my good friends, and it's so easy to let that slip through the cracks. And I think that in my first year at Harvard, it became so easy for me to forget about things like sleeping and eating and taking care of myself and, exercising. But as I have gotten through the years at this glorious school, something that has really changed me is that all of these things that I just mentioned, making time for your friends and family, sleeping and eating and exercise, these are just basically proven to make your life better. I'll just give you one small example. Exercise makes you smarter. So there's a great study from a couple of years ago in which they put rats in like an exercise wheel, and if you make rats exercise more than a certain number of hours a day, their brains actually generate this thing called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which makes your brain grow more neurons. So if you want to be smarter, you want to know more things and remember things quicker, you have to sleep and eat well and get lots of exercise. I swear, it's science, right? So I hope that you will take that particular lesson very, very seriously. And I want to end my elegy, my love letter to Harvard on a cautious note. Yes, I agree, Harvard is a wonderful place, but there are many places in the world that are just like it. Going to Harvard doesn't guarantee that anyone will in fact learn to think higher and feel deeper, learn to see the value of others, or enjoy the pursuit of knowledge for knowledge's sake. These things can be achieved almost anywhere if you apply yourself. And we are so fortunate to live in a country that believes deeply in the education of its people, and we have access to so many incredible institutions that will allow you to do this. I mean, as I walked down the hall just now, I saw, I don't know, maybe dozens of these institutions at which you can get this education which will guide you along your way. It is entirely possible to graduate from Harvard having learned nothing of importance if you so choose. Sadly, it's true. But it is also entirely possible to never go to university and still have a happy life and be a contributing member of society. The key, again, and I cannot stress this enough, is to know how you are going to make yourself a happy and contributing member of society. President Woodrow Wilson said this of the college experience, and I agree completely. Can you give me a slide, please? You are here not merely to prepare to make a living. You are here in order to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, and with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. Please get to know yourself. I bet you're a fascinating person. Appreciate yourself and your skills, and also those of the people around you. Strike your own path, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I want very much to leave you with this idea. Next slide, please. The great luxury of our time is the luxury of choice. We get to choose who we are, what we study, and how we contribute to the world around us. Because we are so lucky to have this choice, choose well. Revel in your luck and choose well. Thank you very much for listening to me. I want to make lots of time to answer questions. So I do have a request that I would like to answer questions from the students in the audience first, and then I will answer parents' questions. Thank you very much.